Hi, welcome to our CreatorCon lab. We've prepared a bit of information on the ServiceNow instance cloning process for you, and we'd like to share that with you here at Knowledge 24.
My name is Adrian Bisdorf. I'm a product manager at ServiceNow. I've been with ServiceNow for 7 years, focused on developer products and administrator products, and excited to talk to you about cloning today.
Hi, I'm Jared Munt, and I've been in the ServiceNow ecosystem for the last 10 years at customers, partners, and now here at ServiceNow, and helping our customers to adopt our new platform security products. Today for this lab, we'll be going over the high level of the moving parts within a clone, what you get with the admin UI, what's going on behind the scenes. We have a handful of labs for you to get hands-on with a few of these features, and then a few tips and tricks at the end. So let's jump in. I will bet that many of us are already familiar with some or most of the process. But to make sure that we're all on the same page, we'll take a little bit of time to cover some of the top level cloning components, and then we'll go deeper quickly. So Adrian, what is cloning?
Great question. So the cloning process primarily is used to copy data and metadata from one instance to another. And we'll go over why you want to clone. It's part of the best practice for ServiceNow development. Typically, we recommend doing this before testing new capabilities, applications, family release upgrades that you wish to deploy to your production instance. And to clone before a new development cycle is also a great idea to keep your instances in sync. You can also clone in order to troubleshoot production or to experiment with new products and capabilities. On the right side, we see the clone process in a simplified fashion. So you're copying the data from a source to a target. However, it's important to keep in mind that the cloning process goes through a backup. So your data from the source comes from the last nightly backup. And clone, in fact, is the restore from that backup onto the target instance. So we'll keep that in mind as we go through today's exercises, because it has a couple of implications on clone timing and on how to set up your clone successfully. Components of the clone, we have a bit of terminology here to go through. So we have a source instance. We have a target instance that you're cloning toward. Data preservers are the data you wish to keep on your target instance. Exclusions is the data that you want to remove from your clone, that you do not want to clone over. Cleanup scripts are automated steps that you are taking after your clone has completed. And we will go through a couple examples of what those might be. This can be anything from data modification to automating some steps and settings that you want to set after the clone. And we have a new application, the Clone Admin Console, which streamlines and simplifies this entire process for you. It brings up all these settings in one place. So we'll be going and featuring that today as well. The Clone Admin Console has been designed to simplify and provide greater visibility and usability around cloning. You can obtain it from the ServiceNow App Store if you are on Vancouver Family Release. If your instance is on Washington Release, it already comes pre-installed. Let's go over a couple features of the Clone Admin Console. We brought all the clone-related settings into one place. You will find your existing clone profiles, exclusions, preservers, and cleanup scripts all within the Clone Admin Console. You have visibility into your current clone activity on the homepage. There is a simplified request form as part of the app, which also provides guidance on how the different settings will affect clone time, and also explains what each of the settings are doing in relation to your clone. You can now choose to have an on-demand backup, which means it takes a new backup at the specified clone start time. So to have a fresh backup can come in handy, and we'll talk a bit about that in today's session. It gives you an up-to-date clone status for the clones that are running. and also the ability to set up recurring clones.
Here we have a list of the high-level order of operations for what happens during a clone. So behind the scenes, it is a little bit more nuanced than this, but these are some of the major milestones. So at the very beginning, we take a look at we go to the target instance, and if you do have any data that's configured to be preserved, we'll copy that off to the side and save that for later. Then if we do have an on-demand backup configured for this particular clone, we will do that. Otherwise, we'll use the most recent nightly backup and move right on to the middle step, that performing of the clone. And that is just a pure database level copy of the instance. After that's completed, the clone process will go through it and trim any data that has been excluded on the target instance, and then we'll reapply any of that preserved data that was saved off to the side. And finally, we'll be running those cleanup scripts. In the new UI, right in the source instance, you have the ability to look at exactly what step your clone is on at any given point in time. So here it's broken up a little bit more granularly. This is an 11-step gauge versus those high level 5 that we just looked at, but it follows that same order of operations. Now, sometimes if we have a very large instance, the clone can take a full day or even longer in some cases. And in those cases, our leading practice for instances like this is something that we call clone chaining. And remember that the order of operations says that the exclusion of data happens after the database is copied. So if any other data modification scripts, like if we're anonymizing any sort of data in the target instance, that would run after the clone takes place and take a long period of time as well. So if we break this up into 2 phases, we can run all of those expensive, long-running operations in the first phase. And the net result of that will be that in this graphic, the subprod 1 would be a much smaller instance and would already have any of that data modification jobs completed on it. So then when we go to clone from subprod 1 to subprod 2, it will run possibly even an order of magnitude faster than before. And by being smaller and more nimble, that is going to be friendlier to your developers and also friendlier to your change management process. And so when we're talking about this, a lot of times what comes up next is, how often should I clone?
Great question. Clone frequency can depend on a number of factors. The short answer, it depends on your organizational balance between how representative you wish your data to be and how you might disrupt the in-flight development work that is happening. Keep in mind that cloning can be disruptive to your development practice. So prior to the clone, we recommend committing or exporting any in-flight development work, which means that development has to pause, either commit changes or export them, and this has to happen prior to each clone. It also starts with communicating to your team to ensure everyone is aware of the time of the clone and can prepare and commit the work prior to that date. One general rule, we recommend cloning more frequently if your instance is closer to production and less frequently if it is farther away from production. And we'll talk in just a second about how that might look like. Ultimately, you have to find a cadence that works best for your team. Here is an example, not a recommendation, but how cloning might look like at an organization. In this case, we're cloning on a monthly basis from production to a staging instance, and on a quarterly basis from production to development 1, 2, and 3.
Okay, we're ready to jump into the lab work. So at a high level, at the end of this session, you'll be able to set up clone profiles. You'll be able to manage multiple instance configurations if your organization requires that. And then also by knowing the order of operations and how each moving part is configured, you'll be in a better place to diagnose and troubleshoot your exact configuration.
Before you can clone, you need to register your target instance on your source instance. To do that, you need the full instance URL, instance.servicenow.com, and your admin credentials. After you save this is a one-time step. Your instance can be used as a target instance for clones moving forward. Keep in mind that we will ask for your admin credentials for each and every clone as a security precaution to ensure that you still have admin credentials for that clone request to be placed. A great place to start is a clone profile, particularly if you are new to clone. Clone profiles are presets for clone, which include specific exclusions, preservers, or scripts that you wish to have as part of your clone. You can also optionally link a clone profile to a specific instance. There are a couple of things to keep in mind. So you can have as many clone profiles as you wish. For example, we can tailor them to specific use cases or reasons why you clone. As an example, you can have a clone profile for upgrades and a clone profile for setting up development environments. You can tailor these exclusions and preservers to ensure you have the right data for your specific use case as part of your clone. On the clone profile, we have multiple settings. These are the same settings that you also see on the clone request form. So if you have specific modifications, you can make them once, save the clone profile, and that'll be ready for you next time you use it. In short, we have the data copied from task and its child tables, problem, incident, and change. The type of backup that you wish to use, you can choose between the most recent backup or from an on-demand backup. You can turn on or off the following items: exclusions, audit, and logs. Audit and logs, keep in mind if you turn them off, this will break activity stream on your target instance because activity stream is built using the audit and log data. And exclusion of attachment data will remove attachments from your target instance. All right, we are ready for exercise number 1, which is the clone profile configuration. And we'll see you back here in a couple minutes.
Welcome back. In our next section, we are going to look at the options within the exclusion portion of the configuration. So this will prevent any data from ending up in your target instance. And remembering that it is actually being trimmed from the instance after the database is copied. So we configure that by creating a new exclude table. And this is a little bit different than some other areas in the platform. It's not a direct reference field onto the table. It is actually a plain text string name of the table name. And another portion, this is a kind of a brute force hammer type of a configuration. So there is not a configuration condition to add on top of that. So it's an all or none on that particular table. A couple of things to note is that if we do exclude a table that is a parent, we will be excluding all of the children tables as well. And one of the lesser known features is something called a .star option. That is where we type in the first part of a table name and a dot and a star. And what that will do is we'll do a wildcard match for any table that begins with that string. So that could be used if you want to exclude a full custom scoped app type of thing. We can type in that scope prefix and optionally any sort of table prefixes, and one configuration will be good for your 5 or your 10 or 50 custom tables that all begin with that same table name. Okay, at this time we're ready to begin exercise 2. Please pause the video and we'll see you back in a few minutes.
Preservers work different from exclusions. When you're preserving a parent table, this will not automatically preserve its child tables. If you wish to preserve data on the child tables, you will have to create individual preservers for each of these tables. Keep in mind that for preservers, we're only preserving the data. The table has to exist both on the source and the target instance. We recommend using preservers only if you absolutely need the data because it can add to your clone duration. If you do use preservers, we recommend applying conditions to your table to only preserve the data you need. We are now ready for exercise number 3, setting up preservers, and we'll see you back here in a couple minutes. We're now ready to schedule the clone. To schedule a clone, you can choose between your source instances that you have registered and a target instance that you wish to clone to. Optionally, you can select the clone profile you had previously created, the time and date you wish your clone to run, and you have a couple options at the bottom of the request form as well. Here you see the definitions, the exclusions, preservers, and cleanup scripts that are pulled from the clone profile you selected. If no profile is selected, these will be all the available exclusions, preservers, and scripts on your source instance. And then we have optional settings that we walked through in the clone profile section of the video, which you will be able to choose as part of the clone request as well. We are now ready to schedule the clone, and we will see you back here after the exercise.
Welcome back. The final area we'll talk about today is about cleanup scripts. These are a powerful tool in your toolbox and can help you with some of the other automating of some of your administrative checklist. These cleanup scripts are configured, again, in that clone console. They do have an order field, like many other things on the platform, so we can have control over how early or how late these things run. Some examples of what ServiceNow ships out of box for these cleanup scripts are the part that disables email on a recently cloned instance, things like cleaning up mid-servers that are probably not available on a target instance. We don't want to carry those down from a higher level instance. Now, some of the common custom examples that we've seen out there in the world are some things like adding a role to a group, where in the, for example, production instance, we would create a group called dev instance admins. We would populate that with all the right people. And then after the clone takes place, the cleanup script would add the admin role or other custom roles to that group, and saving the administrator a step to remember to do after every clone. Other things like modifying data, whether it's pruning out certain fields or any other large data modification, is a good place for to run in a cleanup script. And also doing some dynamic instance theming is also an option. So if you've ever seen an instance that had most recently cloned on a particular date up on the title bar or up in the browser tab, that's powered by a system property that can be updated by a cleanup script. And at this time, we will pause the video and perform exercise 5.
This wraps up our lab for today. Today, we've seen how to set up clone profiles, how to register your target instance, how to manage exclusions, preservers, and cleanup scripts, which will help you set up your clone successfully, ensuring you have the right data after your clone. Now it's time to go over a couple best practices and tips around cloning. It all starts with communicating to your team the time and place when your clone will take place. We also highly recommend setting up a regular cadence or regular schedule so that your clones are an expected event for your team. Keep in mind that clone can be disruptive for development work, so we recommend also saving and committing your development work 24 hours in advance of the clone start time. This is because, as we talked about in the beginning, the data comes from a backup. So you have to leave enough time for the last nightly backup to pick up those changes that you made. And so we recommend scheduling out the clone at least 24 hours in advance. To optimize clone time, we recommend to turn off the exclude attachment data setting. We also recommend to keep amount of data copied from the task and the child tables as full, as opposed to the last 90 days. Keeping it as full will make for a faster clone time, in particular if your database size is very large and if your task table is very large. Avoiding large preservers and applying conditions on preservers will help with clone time as well. And if you do wish to exclude tables such as task, or if you want to remove tables, we recommend removing them altogether. Clone chaining is a great option if you have multiple instances and if your database size is very large.
Well, that wraps up our presentation. I hope you learned a thing or two about cloning. I know I did while we were compiling this deck. And as a reminder, this is only one of many labs compiled this year. So we recommend checking out other learning opportunities for the season. Goodbye.